Have you ever stopped to think about what happens at the moment of our farewell from this world? Do we manage to see our loved ones, feel their emotions, or even perceive our own funeral? This question has haunted humanity since ancient times. Many cultures and spiritual traditions try to offer answers to this mystery, but even modern science is beginning to bring forth surprising evidence about what might occur during this transition. Since the dawn of humanity, various religions and philosophies have taught that death is not the end, but rather a passage to another form of existence. However, does the soul truly remain conscious after the death of the physical body? Are we able to observe what happens around us while we undergo this transition? Accounts of near-death experiences indicate that yes, people who have gone through this experience describe sensations of lightness, freedom, and even the ability to see their own bodies from the outside. But what does all this mean? If we consider near-death experiences as a glimpse of what happens after the transition, we might say that consciousness does not extinguish at the very moment of death. Many people report the sensation of floating above their own body, observing the movement of the doctors, hearing conversations, and even noticing details that they could not have seen if they were unconscious. This phenomenon raises an intriguing question. Can consciousness exist independently of the physical brain? Modern science has begun to take a deeper interest in this subject. Studies conducted in various research centers around the world suggest that even after cardiac arrest, some areas of the brain remain active for a short period of time. This may explain the heightened perception that many people describe. In a study conducted at New York University, researchers discovered that the brains of patients who had undergone clinical death still exhibited activity for several minutes after the declaration of death. The most surprising finding was that this activity was even more intense in certain areas of the brain than during life. But it is not only scientific evidence that makes us reflect on this issue. Throughout history, cultures from different parts of the world have developed similar beliefs about what happens to the soul after death. The ancient Egyptians believed that the soul remained present at the funeral site, observing everything that happened and waiting for the necessary rituals for its passage to the other world. In many cultures, there is the belief that the soul stays close to the living for a certain period, capable of perceiving emotions, thoughts, and even words spoken by loved ones. Another intriguing point is the impact of emotions on the transition process. Accounts of near-death experiences often mention that people who have undergone this experience were able to feel the emotions of those around them more intensely. This suggests that, even after physical death, consciousness may maintain a deep connection with the living. It is as if the soul could perceive the sadness, the love, and even the worry of the family members who remain. Many researchers believe that this phenomenon may be linked to the release of neurotransmitters in the brain at the moment of death. During this transition, the body releases a large amount of serotonin and endorphins, substances that provide a sense of peace and tranquility. This may explain why many accounts describe the moment of death not as something frightening, but as a serene experience, one of acceptance and even ecstasy. In addition to scientific evidence and personal accounts, there is also the cultural and religious factor. In various spiritual traditions, the transition of the soul is described as a process in which consciousness continues to exist and interact with the world of the living for a certain period of time. In Tibetan Buddhism, for example, it is believed that the soul passes through different states of perception before moving on to its next existence. During this period, it can still be connected with those who remain. The way a funeral is conducted can also influence this perception. In many cultures, there is the belief that the soul accompanies the ceremony and that its emotions can be affected by the behavior of the living. Ancient traditions warn that excessive sorrow can bind the soul, hindering its passage. That is why in some cultures, funerals are held in a more serene manner, with soft music, words of gratitude, and positive memories of the departed. However, it is not only religious beliefs that reinforce this idea. There are countless accounts of people who have felt the presence of deceased loved ones during or after the funeral. Some say they felt a sudden breeze, a gentle touch, or even heard the voice of the departed. Others report having dreamt of the deceased in an extremely vivid manner, as if the soul were trying to communicate and reassure the living. The question that arises is, are these phenomena merely the result of the human mind trying to cope with grief? Or is there truly something beyond matter? Science still does not have a definitive answer, but reports continue to emerge from different parts of the world, always with similar descriptions. This uniformity in experiences suggests that perhaps consciousness really does continue to exist beyond physical death. Regardless of one's personal beliefs, contemplating this topic makes us reflect on the importance of life and our relationships. If the soul truly remains conscious after death, it means that the words we speak, the emotions we share, and the gestures of affection we show have a far greater impact than we imagine. It reminds us of the need to cherish every moment, to live more mindfully, and to demonstrate love while we still have the opportunity to do so. From a psychological perspective, it is interesting to note how different people deal with death and grief in distinct ways. While some find comfort in the idea that the soul continues to exist, others prefer to view death as a definitive end. However, there is one common point among all these perspectives: the need to find meaning in the process of life and death. For many, the belief in the continuity of the soul brings a sense of peace, enabling them to cope better with loss and move forward with greater serenity. Over the years, the study of near-death experiences has brought a new perspective to this question. Rather than being merely a topic addressed by religions and spiritual philosophies, the transition of the soul has become a subject of scientific interest. Researchers from various fields, from neurologists to psychologists, are striving to understand the mysteries of this passage and its implications for our understanding of consciousness. So then, are we able to perceive our own funeral? Can the soul be present alongside its loved ones, observing their emotions and feeling their love? The accounts, both of personal experiences and cultural traditions, indicate that yes. But the big question that remains is what really happens after this passage. This mystery, which has challenged humanity for centuries, continues to be one of the greatest questions of existence. If there is something that humanity has always sought to understand, it is what happens after death. No matter the era or the culture, this question has always been present, shaping religions, beliefs, and even scientific research. But beyond spiritual explanations and scientific advancements, there is something deeper that leads us to reflect on this subject: the need to find meaning in our existence. The idea that consciousness survives the death of the physical body is not new. Since the earliest civilizations, accounts indicate that the deceased remain in some way connected to the world of the living, even being able to observe events around them. This belief is reflected in funeral traditions, which vary from culture to culture, but share a common point: the attempt to facilitate the soul's passage to the other realm. In many cultures, specific rituals are performed to ensure that the soul makes the transition smoothly. In ancient Egypt, for example, bodies were embalmed, and the dead were buried with personal objects, as it was believed that the soul would still need them in the next life. In Japan, there is a custom known as butsudan, a small domestic altar where family members pray and leave offerings for their ancestors. The idea behind this is that the connection with those who have passed on continues, even after death. Another interesting aspect is the belief that the soul can perceive the thoughts and emotions of the living after its passing. Several accounts of near-death experiences mention that, in that state, people deeply felt the emotions of those nearby. Some describe perceiving not only what their family members were saying, but also their deepest feelings, such as love, pain, regret, and longing. This heightened perception may explain why, in various spiritual traditions, it is recommended that loved ones show serenity and acceptance during the farewell. Some cultures believe that if family members express excessive grief, it may hinder the soul's journey. This concept is also present in Spiritism, where it is said that the soul can become attached to the emotions of the living and find difficulties in following its path. But what does science have to say about this? Could the idea that the soul perceives the events around it after death be explained by biological mechanisms? Some scientists suggest that near-death experiences may be linked to residual brain activity. Studies show that immediately after cardiac arrest, there is still a brief period of neural activity during which the brain can process external stimuli. This may explain the sensation of heightened consciousness, but it does not account for detailed accounts of events occurring outside the person's field of vision. One of the most famous cases that challenges the traditional scientific explanation occurred in a hospital in the United States. A patient who underwent a near-death experience described with accuracy details of the room where he was hospitalized, and even what the doctors were saying as they tried to resuscitate him. The most impressive detail was that he mentioned a blue shoe that was on the windowsill of the hospital, a place where he could never have seen before. When the nurses went to check, they found exactly what he had described. Accounts like this raise important questions. How can someone perceive something at a moment when their brain activity should be reduced or non-existent? The materialistic explanation for consciousness begins to be challenged when we encounter cases like these. If consciousness is merely a product of the brain, how can we explain experiences in which people describe external events while their brain is inactive? Another interesting point is that many people who have experienced near-death experiences report having encountered deceased loved ones. They describe emotional meetings in which they receive messages of peace and are advised to return to life, as it was not yet the right time for them to depart. Some of these experiences are so impactful that they completely change the way the person views life and death. This leads us to a fundamental aspect: the emotional and spiritual impact of these experiences. Many people who have gone through this report that they have completely lost the fear of death. For them, the certainty that consciousness continues to exist after physical life has brought a new perspective on the meaning of existence. Some have radically changed their lifestyles, becoming more empathetic, patient, and oriented towards love for others. If the soul continues to exist after death, this means that the way we live our lives has a profound impact. If our emotions and intentions remain with us even after death, then our actions and words become even more significant. This reflection can lead us to value every moment, every relationship, and every act of kindness even more. But there is also a psychological aspect involved in the way we deal with death. Grief, for example, is a necessary and natural process, yet we are often taught to repress our feelings or to treat death as a taboo. Cultures that deal with death better, treating it as part of the soul's journey, generally have a healthier relationship with loss. The belief that their loved ones remain present in some way brings great comfort. This is also reflected in the way funerals are conducted. Increasingly, funerals have become celebrations of life, where friends and family share joyful memories and express gratitude for the time spent with the deceased. This approach not only helps the soul in its journey, but also provides a lighter and more natural grieving process for those who remain. Even though science still does not have all the answers, the number of accounts and evidence regarding the continuity of consciousness after death leads us to reflect on what it truly means to be alive. Is the life we lead now merely a part of a much larger journey? If the soul continues to exist, what does that mean for our daily choices and actions? If there is something we have learned from all these stories, it is that the love and connections we create in this life can continue in some way. No matter what the exact explanation for the phenomena that occur after death, the certainty that many acquire from these experiences is that existence does not end with the demise of the physical body. And you? What do you think about this topic? Do you feel comfort in thinking that consciousness continues beyond death? Leave your opinion in the comments and share your reflections. If you enjoyed this content, subscribe to the channel for more fascinating topics about the mysteries of existence. See you in the next video.